Hi everybody and welcome to my YouTube fly tying tutorial. The pattern I'm going to tie today is a variation of a woolly bugger. For better lack of a name, we'll call it a Schlappen Bugger. And if you don't know why or what exactly that means, I will explain it as this tutorial goes along. For starters, I'm tying today on an Allen fly fishing hook. This is their S403 size 8 streamer hook. The 403, that 3 in it means that it's a 3 extra long shank, which basically just means that, for instance, this is a size 8. A hook shank for a size 8 would be somewhere around this point right here. It would go to about where that bodkin's right now. But whenever you call it 3XL, it basically means it's just 3 hook sizes bigger of a shank. So if you think of a size 8, 3 hook sizes away from that would be a 642. So this would be basically a shank that's equivalent to a size 2 hook. So for our purposes, it's giving us a longer shank. For this hook, the first thing I do is debarb it. There is a little barb, so I'm just going to open up the jaws of my vise, just clamp down a little bit over that barb, and just debarb it. Okay, let me get tightened in here, and then let's start tying this pattern. So for this pattern, I'm going to start off with a hot spot. That's something that I really like putting on to certain woolly buggers, especially darker ones, and this is going to be a darker bugger. So I'm going to just build a little base up behind the eye of the hook. And I have a fluorescent chartreuse set of bead chain eyes. I'm just going to put them on with a few wraps going one direction and a few wraps going the other. The thread that I'm using today is a black 6/0. By using 6/0, it really lets you bear down a bit on these eyes. So I'm going to put a few wraps back and forth, and now I have those bead chain eyes secured. Looks like I have a little metal sticking off one side, so I will trim that off whenever this fly is finished. All right, next I do want to add a little bit more weight too, so I'm just going to put some 020 lead wire on the shank. I'm just going to take a little piece, just bend it off in my hand. I'll just twist this on. I want to get approximately 8 twists on. Any more than that, and it might be a little too heavy for the streams that I'm fishing. You can just literally pinch it off and take the ends, twist them, push it all together. I might snug it up against the eyes just to ensure that everything is twisted correctly. Then I might back it off just a hair. So I'll show you from the top. I'm going to leave a little gap in there, and that gap is going to allow me to tie off a few of my materials. So I'm just going to take my thread, go back, and then after it catches, just lock this lead wire down. I might build a little ramp leading from the hook shank to the lead wire. Then I can stop right there. Well, for our tail of this woolly bugger, we're going to use marabou, as a lot of woolly buggers tend to. But I'm going to get this all from one piece of hackle. Let me just zoom out and show you this hackle. This is a piece of Schlappen. Basically, if you ask any fly tyer for some really webby hackle, that's what they will more than likely give you. This Schlappen can be found on the saddles, on the sides of a lot of saddles. A lot of companies don't leave it. This Schlappen itself came from Clearwater Hackle. I know as of right now on all their saddles they leave the Schlappen on, but you can also purchase individual packs of it, and that's where I got this. So what's nice about this is we can use the hackle for the hackle on the fly, yet we can also use this marabou for our tail. I'm going to grab a piece of this marabou that has some real nice modeling. I really like that black and white variegation that's showing there. I'm just going to pinch a little bit and pull it off. After I have that pulled off, I might clump it all together. I'm going to measure it out. I want it to be about the same as one shank. Place it down and lock it in. Okay, after I have that locked in, I'm going to take my scissors and just trim all that excess away. All right, let me zoom back in for you. Now at this point, if you want to add some more stuff into the tail, if you want to put a little bit of crystal flash there, you're more than welcome to. I'm not going to do that because all that I'm really going for on this pattern is I really like those dark muted colors, and I really like this hot spot eye. I really think that just throwing a chartreuse eye on this pattern really just seems to light it up. I'm going to go back to my Schlappen feather. I'm going to go to the tip. I'm going to pinch it by the very tip, and I'm going to pull some of the feathers back. kind of like you would tie in a soft hackle. At that point, I'm going to tie in. I'm going to tie this in at the very back of the pattern and just lock it in. Just a couple wraps are all you need. Now, you can cut that excess, but you really don't need to. If you just want to wrap over it, that's an easy way to pinch everything. And then finally, I'm going to add chenille. You don't have to go crazy with chenille in this pattern. Typically, whenever I'm adding chenille to a lot of my flies, I really like some crystal chenilles, but because we're using Schlappen for this hackle, that chenille is going to be covered, and you're not really going to see it. I just want something dark in there to represent kind of that lateral line of this streamer, or to give it that leech look. So I'm just going to use some just medium black chenille for the tip, or for the end. Just going to pinch it away and get rid of that. I want to expose the yarn underneath, so I'm not tying a lot of bulk onto the pattern. Let me just trim a little section of this chenille. Oops, let me get that a little closer. Okay, once I have my chenille tied in place, I'm just going to advance my thread up, and I'll show you where I'm going to stop my thread. I am using a rotary vise, and you do not need a rotary vise to tie this pattern, or pretty much any pattern, but I am going to lock my thread in with a quick half hitch just in front of those bead chain eyes. Put that away, and next just get this chenille wound on. And I'm going to stop the chenille directly behind the eyes. I don't want to bring it past those eyes. I'm just going to take my thread. I only need approximately 3 or 4 wraps to get this chenille locked in place. And I'm going to take my scissors, I'm going to try to just trim it as close to those eyes as possible. Alright, I'm then just going to put a couple figure 8s back through there. And for the Schlappen, I'm not going to worry about using my rotary vise. I'm just going to advance it like you would normal hackle. Whenever I advance the first couple turns, I really do nothing. I'm just going to make 1 or 2 turns at the back, and then I start moving forward. As you move forward, you can palmer it if you want, which basically just means to pull it onto one side, or else just let it take on its own. I will typically let it take on its own because this fly will really just take off. When I get close to those eyes, sometimes I will make 2 wraps and stop. In this case, I'm just going to make basically 1.5 wraps. Stop. I'm going to tie off my hackle. Just like that chenille, you only need a couple wraps. It's not really going to be going anywhere. I'm going to keep pinching it up. I'm going to trim it again as close to those eyes as possible without going over the eyes. Now I'm going to take my left hand, just hold everything back, place a couple wraps to secure. I place a few more figure 8s just to get all that chenille down between those eyes. Then before you tie off, just do a quick 360 of the head. Make sure it looks the way you want it. Once it does, I'm just going to put 1 quick half hitch. I'm going to whip finish and get rid of my thread. Because this fly does bounce a lot, because you might have a lot of fish on this, as I would hope you do, I'm going to put a little bit of head cement. Just going to apply it to my bodkin. Get 1 healthy drop and place that drop between the eyes, on the front of the fly, and directly underneath the eyes. Once you have your head cement, you now have your finished Schlappen Bugger. So hopefully it makes sense to you why I'm calling this the Schlappen Bugger. If you haven't figured it out, it's because it's mainly tied with all the materials found on a Schlappen feather. So this is the finished fly, just a very buggy looking pattern. What I always do on my bench, I always keep a little bowl full of water. I've tied one of these already, and it's soaked in water. Let me grab that for you. I want you to take a look at what this fly looks like when you get it wet, because it is an ugly fly whenever it's dry. So I'll zoom out. This is a look at a wet one, and that fly gets really dark. So please keep that in mind. You can see some of that black and white, that grizzly pattern from the hackle, but it really gets extremely dark. It really takes on the characteristics of a leech, at least in my opinion. So don't be afraid to just experiment with some of the colors of the chenille underneath that if you're looking for something to really, we'll say, take off, and if you're looking for something to show contrast with the hackle. And also, really be cognizant of how much marabou you place at the tail. If you do not place a lot, that marabou can get very sleek once it's wet. The marabou that I have right now will be more than enough on the finished fly. So this is a wet one, there's the dry one, and I really do recommend you keeping a bowl of water at your, we'll say on your bench somewhere, just so you can test out the pattern and see what they're going to look like when they're finished. Well, speaking of finished, that's what I am with this pattern. Again, this is the Schlappen Bugger. Thanks go out to Allen Fly Fishing for the use of the S403 streamer hook. It's a great hook that I recommend you tying buggers on. Also, thanks go out to Clearwater Hackle. They have that fantastic Schlappen, and I recommend you getting some and trying it out on some of your favorite patterns. And thanks to all of you for viewing this YouTube tutorial. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them directly on this YouTube page, or you can email me at tcammisa@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody.